Hey, security peeps, it is Renee Small here with another special edition of Breaking into Cybersecurity. This is our Mondays with Dan, Dr. Dan edition. We've been here for, I believe, 9 weeks now, talking to Dan, hearing from him. Dr. Dan, as you all probably know at this point, is a peak performance strategist. He's a psychologist, but he focuses on helping CEOs, executives, and people in leadership really get to their peak performance. I'm Renee Small. As you all likely know by now, I'm a cybersecurity recruiter helping leaders bring in top cybersecurity talent. So, Dan, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, good morning. Dan Schaefer, Peak Performance Strategies. For those of you who haven't met me before, I'm a business and sports psychologist. This is not therapy. This is all about strategy. It's about people who find themselves in a couple of situations. One, frequently they're alone at the top of their organization and have absolutely nobody to bounce anything off of, even for an opinion. So I will talk about my phone number. My offering is you pick up the phone, text me, give me a call. No fee for a discussion on the phone to find out what you personally need to have happen right now that's not happening. The other thing that I do that I think all of you do, although you probably don't term it this way, is I sell mistakes. I help people avoid really, really serious and costly mistakes that I've seen others make, that I commit to my clients that I don't let them make. And so a lot of this has to do around preparation for competition. Every one of you are competing. Now, I've worked with professional football players. Chad Pennington was the quarterback for the Giants and for the Jets and the Dolphins. He's my client since 2005. He prepared to compete, but he would have timeouts. They'd have, but with cybersecurity people, there's no timeout. I described it in a call last week. Everybody I talked to, as they describe what the threats are that they face on a consistent basis, it's like deciding to step in under Niagara Falls. The water never stops. And so it's one of the unique positions today in the world that requires flexibility, creativity, and the fact that the ability to move forward to protect the company or the people you're working for.
Yeah. So, Dan, over the last couple of weeks, we talked about a number of different things, and you've been talking to a number of cybersecurity leaders and cybersecurity professionals. And I want everyone to know, if you haven't known already, Dan's been we worked together for a long time, and Dan has worked extensively with cybersecurity leaders, with CISOs and executives in that space. So not only CEOs and athletes and executives across the board, but very much into the cybersecurity space. So he understands our struggles and how much, like he said, we're always underwater. So the cybersecurity person, it never lets up. So today's topic, or today's two questions, the first one I always bring up is 2025. Last week, Dan, I was on one of these live streams last Friday, and we were talking about this current situation, the pandemic, COVID-19, George Floyd, the riots, everything going on in the world right now. And I said, one of the things that you say all the time, and how to stay focused and how to, continue when you do have a job to do, you do have to focus on the security threats. As we all know, in this environment is when security people, when you get more hacks, they feed off of chaos. So how do we all stay focused in this environment? And one of the things that I talked to them about, I said that you always say, we're in 2025 looking backwards. And you've always said that. We've always been 5 years ahead looking backwards. So I'd love for you to talk to the folks today about that. And then after that, about our topic, which is when you decide to leave, what do you do next?
It's very interesting. I've said this to Renee for many years now. She looks like she's here, but she's not really here. She's already out in the future, which is where most of you folks are. They talk about, some people will describe success as, persistence plus imagination. Well, you can't persist towards something that you can't imagine. So every client I have today is in 2025 working backwards. How does that work? Well, and let me just take for a second that if you're talking to a prospect or a client or in sales, talk to them about where they want to be. And a couple of dynamics take place. First of all, every one of my clients, I have a system that works this, that takes a person out to 2025 and says, okay, here's what 2025 looks like to you. Here is where you want to be. Here's what you'd love to be doing, the kind of position you'd like to have. I give you a magic wand, you wave it. What does it look like? And once that's established in your subconscious mind as well as your conscious mind, we start to look backwards for anything that you could possibly do or that could happen that could derail your plans. So it's important to study on it. What are some of the things that come up? And I'll take professional sports and apply it to what we're doing here because it's competition. I'd say to a professional football player, what do you want to have happen? He said, I want to increase my concentration. I said, okay, what gets in the way of your concentration? And they say, I get distracted. And then the next question is what distracts you? And frequently, it's the way an individual talks to themselves. So I would say, for example, with Renee, what does Renee hear Renee saying to Renee when Renee overhears Renee talking to Renee? But how important is distraction? You can try this. If you have kids, you'd love to do this with your kids, but sit up straight in your chair for a minute. Start to move your right foot clockwise, round and round, round and round, round and round, round and round. While your right foot is going clockwise, with your right hand, draw a big number 6 in the air. See, your foot goes backwards. It's amazing how that happens. Why it happens is not important as the fact that it does happen. So we have to be conscious about what distracts us. So whereas with a football player, certainly distractions when they're on the field in the middle of a play is one thing, but they can't take something from outside, off the field, from the media, or from the sidelines, or from their personal life or their business and bring it into the middle of that game. It'll distract them. And of all the people that I know, there's nobody that can afford a distraction less than a cybersecurity leader. I mean, they have to be on their game. It's bringing your A game to the table every single time. Not some days, this day, it's not being a little bit, because, your attacks never stop. It's like a quarterback who the play never ends. You still have 400-pound linemen coming to sack you. So again, it's a competitive environment. And so that's a strategy that we use to move in that direction. But there's an invisible dynamic that takes place with everybody that I work with and anybody who's trying to promote yourself or to promote your business or to promote your company's business. It's called short-term discomfort versus long-term regret. If you're looking for a cybersecurity professional, you may not want to deal with Renee now, but I'll tell you what you really, really don't want. You don't want to be out in 2025 looking backwards saying, wow, I wish I called her. Now, it's how do you find people who are vetted, who have experience in the game? You call somebody who's there. And we've worked together with cybersecurity people for years. And so it's just one of the strategies. But the interesting thing about 2025, because a lot of my work is invisible, it's with the subconscious mind. It operates on your behalf without any effort on your part. When you say to your subconscious mind, I want this in 2025, it says, are you sure? Yeah, and it starts to move in that direction. My business is about keeping people out of the way of their subconscious mind, dragging them toward where they want to be. And I've seen it over. I can give you tons of examples. I have examples in my book, Click, The Competitive Edge. But again, it's a kind of thing that people, because it's about your A game. What do you want to have happen for yourself? And also, What do you need to have happen right now that's not happening? I'm not talking about next week, the week after. I'm talking about right now.
Right. So, Dan, we have a couple of good comments and questions. Chris Roberts says, the decide to leave part is interesting. I've managed to screw that up a few times in my history. So when you say when you decide it's time to leave, what do you do next?
Chris, I want to let you know that you are the only person who has ever screwed anything up. You feel terrible about yourself. You know what happens is people don't, I tell people you really need to pay attention to the vibes you get. Honor your intuition. If something isn't working well, or you feel that there's some threat to your position, then it's time to take some action. But the question always comes back is, what action do you take? Now, I've had people who, I can give you an example of a woman who I met in Geneva with when I was on a global project. And she said to me, I got a problem. I said, what's the problem? She said, I'm pregnant. And she said, I know that there are people in my company who are going to come in and try to get my job. I know I have to go on maternity leave for 4 or 5 months after I have the baby. What am I going to do? So we set up a whole strategy around her consolidating her practice, getting all her people in, and she ran a huge financial division in Europe. And ultimately, she had to go to a regional conference that she was not supposed to be at because she was on maternity leave. And I said to her, go to the conference. The reason you're going is not for you. You're going there because of your clients. They depend on you to do that stuff. But we said it was a 5-month strategy that we set up while her pregnancy was progressing. So sometimes it takes time to get out. The other thing, and I'll give you an example of what happened when HP merged with Compaq. I worked with about 90 senior executives who were not sure that their jobs would exist after the merger took place. So what we did is we set up consulting companies. They had a private consulting company. They didn't marketing anything, but they built a safety net, and the safety nets are important. So, but I would say to somebody, when they'd say, we just had some people leaving. We had some people leave our company. I said, well, where did they go? They said, we don't know. I said, how could you have a really talented person leave your company and not know where they're going to follow them? Because they are part of your consulting company. Should the bottom fall out? Or should you need to bring resources in? I've seen this happen, Renee. I've seen this happen over and over and over again. But that's the important. I mean, I talk to people all the time about cybersecurity risks, and I say, listen, if cybersecurity risk even comes into your thought process, and you're looking around for somebody to help you, the first call is to call Renee. It's not what does it cost somebody to call her, is what's the cost of not calling her. And that's what I say to people. I can't even calculate the cost of not calling me to spend 15 minutes on the phone and tell me what's happening. Because it's not going to cost you anything unless you don't call. So again, it's not this. I'm not a fit for everybody. But I know that the reality is that people who are trying to move forward don't want to make a mistake. When somebody said, what's on your mistake? And anybody who wants to email me and ask me for my mistakes list, I'll send them the mistakes list. These are mistakes that my clients made before they became my client and what it costs them money, emotion, or reputation. Because what we know, Renee and I have been dealing with this for years. Slow is not working for anybody anymore. People want to fast track everything. People want to move into the blue ocean. If you haven't read the book, The Blue Ocean Strategies, get a copy of it and read it. How do you move into the blue ocean where you have absolutely no competition? That's where you want to be. And so when you go into an interview with a company, the question is, are you interviewing them or are they interviewing you? You want to be interviewing them, because if you're really, really good at what you do and you know what that is, then you have to be very selective that you're going to go to a company that's going to allow you the freedom to be creative. Cost them a fortune to stop you.
Yep. Very true, Dan.
And everybody doesn't think like you. You guys and women are not on this planet. You're thinking, so you're someplace else, because you wouldn't be doing what you're doing if you did. So the fact is you have to recognize where you are in the universe and what the threats are. And you're talking to people who aren't even aware that there's a threat, and so it's only when it hits them in the back of the head and they go, how did that happen? Well, that's what we're looking at here.
There's so many people that talk about, and I know you've heard this a ton of time from the cybersecurity execs that we've connected with, that tell you even their leadership, they don't fully understand what the cybersecurity leaders do, what the cybersecurity professionals do. They will look for one thing, or they think they're hiring for one thing, and then they don't really fully understand that. And that in and of itself is such a challenge.
That's why I think that a lot of the interviews have to be turned around to what kind of questions are you going to ask the people who are interviewing you. And then you have to assess, is the person who's interviewing you tomorrow got to be the final decision maker? Renee and I know that we've dealt with companies where the person who really needs the talent went to a department within their company that wasn't able to explain what they needed. And so how do you do that? How do you make sure that the person understands? And when you start to talk about cybersecurity, how many people really understand what you do? Probably very few. People will shake their heads, oh, I know what you do. No, they really don't.
They have no clue.
So the question you have to ask yourself is, when somebody's shaking their head, oh, I get it, do they really? And if they don't, what does it cost them not to get it? So, one of the interesting things that I discovered with working with senior executives is that when I gave them a choice of competitive edge strategies, what did they want to do? And I believe there's 8, and we can talk about that a little bit later. But the fact is that power communication topped the list. How do you communicate with somebody? How do you communicate with somebody who really truly needs what you have, but doesn't know the right questions to ask? When somebody asks you a question, when you're going to talk to somebody about cybersecurity, I would not expect for a second that they have the right questions to ask you. So I think that your responsibility is to say, you can ask me any question that you want, but now I'm going to give you a list of questions that I want you to be asking me because it'll help you. So you're going to have to provide them with the question. Somebody said, I really want great answers. Well, to get great answers, you have to ask fantastic questions. So how do you put them together? If you're looking to move from one company to another, what do you need to do here? How do you get that into a situation where you can really ask that kind of question? So it's a challenge, but it's planning. People have to prepare to compete. How do you prepare to compete? I'll give you an example. Come back to sports, whether you're a football fan or not. And I'm hoping that phone is going to stop in a minute.
You want to answer it, Dan? I know your clients, they always need you.
I can't.
Dan has serious clients.
Well, that's the other thing is that I'm on speed dial with clients. Somebody said to me, I really want to. It's funny. They said, companies will spend a fortune to analyze stuff to figure why something didn't work. They'll spend very little on preparing to compete. So my football story, Super Bowl III, Dave Herman protected Joe Namath and Bubba Smith. Everybody knows Namath. many people know, maybe don't know Bubba Smith. Dave Herman was 6'2", 250. Bubba Smith was 6'7", 385 something. So I said, how did you prepare to control him in the game? He said, I watch game films. So I said, what do you watch for? He said, well, I figure when a guy that big has got to move forward, he's got to be standing out 1 foot just a little bit longer than everybody else. He said, so I never waited for the ball to be snapped. I just waited till his toe came up. Now, if somebody's got 4 quarters and numerous downs to win a game, who prepares to that degree, how does somebody go into an interview and just wing a presentation or wing a pitch to somebody or wing a pitch to the board of directors, realizing that in the arena that you guys are in, very few people understand this. Like Renee knows, we laugh about this all the time. I'm ecstatic that I can turn my computer on. I still get mail by the Pony Express. So, but again,
very proud of you, Dan, for being on here so many weeks in a row. This is awesome.
Yeah, so I've even gotten away now that I can put people on Zoom calls. So I'm doing Zoom calls. I mean, Renee has helped drag me into the 21st century. But again, so this is about winning. You guys are in a massive competition. People that hire you are like somebody who hires offensive linemen to protect a valuable quarterback. That's really what you're doing. You're the offensive line. And so there are people who depend on you but don't know the right stuff to ask. They don't know the right questions to ask you. Because I'm finding that over and over and over again. People are not asking the right questions. So what we attempt to do here is to come back and say, okay, so when you decide it's time to leave, you probably know that it's time to leave where you are long before you do that. And so there may be some reluctance to do that. There's some preparation. There's putting things together in a way that you feel comfortable, that you have a safety net. All my guys with Hewlett-Packard, women with Hewlett-Packard, had built safety nets. 85 out of the 90 never had to use them, but they had them. They had a company that was like the small group, and the question is who do you have? Who are your resources? Who do you pull together? Who do you know? And you've been doing this for years. But the point is that I believe that everybody walks around with a toolbox. And they have tools in the toolbox that they're very, very familiar with. And there are other tools in the toolbox that you don't even know are there. And so one of the key issues is identifying what you really do well, because that's important. You have to know what's in there. But then you open the toolbox up and you say, who can throw other tools into the toolbox? And how do we make that happen? Becomes important stuff. For your A game first. I've had competitive athletes that have been in team sports say to me, I'm not working on myself. This is a team sport. I said, it's a team sport after you bring your A game to the field. So if you're working with a team of people, you have to know what you do well so that you can help develop the people in your company who are coming up. And Renee and I have talked about this for years. You could be really, really very good at what you do. You could be living in a world of unconscious competence where you do stuff automatically. But you'll never be able to teach something to somebody else that you don't know that you know. So it really becomes important to find out what you know and then communicate it to people who make a decision.
Well, Dan, that happens all the time. And it definitely happens when a person is moving from especially a technical role into a management role. So really, really, really strong technically. They don't know what they don't know, or they just had that unconscious competence. And then when it's time to move into the management spot and they have to train and teach the other people beneath them what they're doing or what they know, it just becomes very difficult. People struggle when they make that jump.
That's what happened with HP. When Carly Fiorina came into HP, she said, I'm promoting some very talented people up into these really top leadership positions. I mean, running countries and regions in Europe and around the world. And she said, I don't want to put a really good technical person into a place and let them learn on the job. So we did a lot of work with helping people to manage other people. And, what we developed was, I had a guy who ran a country, and he had 7 people that that reported to him indirectly, which was interestingly enough, the limit that they put on it at that time. But they were all over the world. So we realized that the traditional management structure would not work for them. So we switched from a management culture to a coaching culture that required people to understand what they did well and to teach it. But it was the secret of all of this. So again, it's an important thing. But now what's happened is so many people are looking to figure, how do I manage a remote team? And it's interesting. If you put the traditional management structure aside, there's a 3-step part to this coaching culture. I come to work for Renee, and Renee says to me, I have a project. Take it home, review it, come back, and you tell me how you're going to do it, what your process is going to be. So I'll sit down with Renee and talk to Renee about this. And she has to be quiet and let me explain it. But what I'm doing is making her comfortable with giving me that role. That's phase 1. The second phase is, we need this project done by December 15th. Is there anything that you can imagine that would get in the way between now and December 15th? No. So I've done 2 things. I've committed to the process that she agrees with and she's comfortable with. I've agreed to a time frame. And her next question to me is, what do you need from me? I need money. I need resources. I need people. And so all she has to do to check up on her 7 people that are reporting to her is to pick up the phone every day and say, do you need anything from me today? Do you need anything from me today? Rather than worrying about that. Now, I've seen a law firm where a guy said to me, he fought me on it in the beginning, but he ultimately said, he said, I saved $20 million in 20 minutes by having this discussion with somebody. Because this person was going in to try a case. When she described to me how she was going to proceed, I realized we were going to lose. We were able to stop it cold. I saved the client. He said I would have lost the client. So knowing what somebody's going to do beforehand, it's like selling mistakes, is really important. Now, if people go to my website, there's a video on there of a presentation I did for IFMA, International Facility Managers Association. It's called A Cost of Myths. Review that. See how many myths you or your company are operating on that really are costing you a fortune. Because somebody who thinks that they're going to go to a meeting and that they have a 30-second elevator pitch that they can go into and talk to people about, they're sadly mistaken, because you don't have 30 seconds. You only have 6. After 6 seconds, they're gone. And people wonder why stuff doesn't work. It's a lot easier to operate like a football player, run a play over and over and over and over again before you do that. I had a guy, one of the things I do, interestingly enough, is I guarantee golfers 3 to 6 strokes off their golf game without ever touching a club. Now, if anybody's interested in that, I can help you with that too. So, but I had a guy call me into his office. I had no idea who he was until I got there. He said to me, I want to go from a 3 handicap to a scratch golfer. Can you help me? I said, yes. When I got there, he pushed all the golf stuff off the desk and he said, I'm in the middle of one of the biggest mergers and acquisitions that are going on in the country today. I've got 3 months to persuade 3 guys that I'm the guy to run the company. And so we went through a process that I had to help him identify who it was, how to talk to different people. He got the position. We went out to dinner. I said, do you know anybody else in the same? Do you know what the guy, what did I say? I said, you're going out to, we went out to dinner. And I said to him, do you know anybody in the same situation that you're in? He said, absolutely. I said, well, will you refer me? He says, no. He says, I can't tell anybody about you. So people who get a competitive edge never give it away. And that's one of the challenges I had. So I do these programs because nobody knows what I do. It's all invisible. But if you go on my website. There's a lot of stuff on the myth, of course, the myths. And then the question is how do you get your pitch down to 6 seconds? When somebody says to me, what do you do? I laugh a little bit. I say, it's funny. What I do is I sell mistakes. Nobody walks away from you. Now, if you're a cybersecurity person and you say you sell mistakes, who's walking away? Nobody. But they'll never, and then it breaks the pattern.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. There's been some really good comments on here, and I didn't want to interrupt you, Dan, but I just want to shout some people out with their comments because they've been great. And this is really the reason why I shout out the comments is because sometimes people are listening to this. They're not actually watching and reading every comment. So Ben Wolf talked about doing the number 6 and the foot and how it always goes the other way. You can't do it. We keep trying it, which took a couple people made that comment last week too. So we had Felicia Newton. She came on, said good morning. Lauren Provost, Dr. Lauren came on and said, what a great accurate quote when we were talking earlier. Mary Aji, another great session. Ben Wolf again talking about putting the number 6 in the air and how that works, how it's so funny how that works. And we already talked about Chris Roberts' comments. Kyle Griffith said, awesome info. Thanks, Dr. Dan. James Johnson, insightful information. I'm taking notes. Thank you. Paul says he loves the 6-second rule. And Cherie Warwick says she loves it. I sell mistakes as well as that you are dropping gems, Dan. You drop gems everywhere you go.
Well, people have the freedom to use this. I mean, take these and use them in you. But you know what it is? It's very interesting. When I worked with cybersecurity people who had to manage teams of people, and their role was wanting to move up within their company or move into another company, we profile the people they were going to talk to. Single, married, divorced, separated, kids, gay, straight, how they communicate, so that they molded their communication strategy to the person they were talking to, so that they decided what was most important to that individual and present them with the information to make a decision. So it wasn't random. It's just not going to talk about what I do. This is planned. I mean, I have worked with one cybersecurity professional. I had about 25 profiles of people within a company that they had to talk to based on personalities and who they needed to persuade. Not to persuade them without integrity, but the fact is to put the message together in a way that it made sense to them.
Yeah.
Because if the minute you start to talk technical to somebody who is either embarrassed by not knowing what you're talking about, or who needs to know but doesn't know right the questions to ask, you're just talking into a vacuum. It's all gone away. And so it's how to persuasively ask questions. And as I refer you back to my website, there are a lot of videos on there about this material and how this system works. Feel free to take it and use anything, anything I have. You want to make a mistakes list. I tell people, I told a guy this morning, send me a mistakes list. My role is to make it confusing. See, when you make a mistakes list, it has to be confusing, so that when somebody reads it, they have no idea what you're talking about. And they come back and say to you, what do you mean by this? What do you mean by that?
I just put it in there. I'm going to add it. DanSchaeferPhD.com.
Right.
That's the website. And anyone that wants Dan's phone number, feel free. Anybody can reach out to me. People have reached out over the last few weeks. I know Dan has been working with clients of people who've been on this program, who have listened to what Dan has been saying over the past 8 or 9 weeks, and have already started to use, Dan's program and see the progress immediately.
One of the things that we're doing is that I put together, I believe there are 8 keys to a competitive edge. And so in July 6th, I'm starting an 8-week program. It's going to be 7 to 8 in the morning, here, and then I'm doing one in 10 for the West Coast people. It's going to be on Zoom. It's going to be 8 keys to a competitive edge, and how you'll identify what your competition is doing that they will never, ever tell you about.
Yep. So it's the 888 program. So back in the day, Dan did this 888 program, and it was one day, right, Dan? It was 8 hours.
8 keys to a competitive edge, 8 hours straight for only 8 people, including lunch. There's no lunch on a Zoom call. But what was interesting, and the reason it didn't work out very well in the long run, was because people never knew who was going to come and sit at the table with them. Whereas this is anonymous. You know, people can come in. The other thing is about asking questions. You know, I did a program one time for hockey goaltenders. I've been working with hockey goalies for 25 years. I did a program for hockey goaltenders. So it was a clinic. And at the end, I said, were there any questions? And there were 95 of them. And there were no questions. I said to myself, why were there no questions? And at the end, I had 40 kids lined up along the wall saying to me, I would never ask a question in front of people I'm competing with. So with Zoom, you know, you have the ability to send chat questions in anonymously, privately, which will address as many of those as we possibly can.
Yep.
But if someone really wants to talk to me about this, take my phone number and text me and say, when can we talk? And we'll find a time. So and that phone number is 917-880-6758, but it's on the website.
Yep. And if anyone wants to reach Dan, just reach out to me and send me a message. I'll send you all Dan's info. Dan is a huge texter. So if you send him a text, he responds pretty immediately. And then from there, he will, then you guys can jump on a call. But Dan has helped a ton of people so far, has helped me for years and years and years. So we want to make sure, that this community is ready, has all the resources that you need. Especially during this time, with COVID-19, there's been a couple different things that I've seen personally from a hiring and movement perspective. People are still hiring. People are still moving. A handful of people have been laid off due to COVID-19. So there's been a few different transitions that people are going through. So either you decide on your own, or the decision is made for you that you have to leave, talking to Dan and really getting that, what do you do next when you decide, or when the decision is made for you, and the next steps after that.
Talking to Dan. It's like having a getaway bag. You could put I've had people put consulting companies together with resources of people they're going to talk to and people who they got to bring in and handle different kind of projects, and never use it. They never needed to use it, but it was always there. So there's a tremendous level of comfort having a safety net.
Yep. Exactly.
And same thing for a company. If a company is the amount of people I talk to who sell cybersecurity insurance and they say, well, we don't really know that we need this, so we're not sure. I said, just call. And if you do decide, who do you call next? Do you go to the yellow pages? No, you call Renee. So when somebody wakes up in the morning, they say, I think I need to protect myself. The first thing you need to do is talk to somebody who can get you somebody who can protect yourself.
Yeah, for sure. So Dan, we're almost at 40 minutes. Any final words of wisdom for folks as we close out? Dan, I'm gonna, anybody, like I said before, I put his website in the chat. I will also update the LinkedIn message with Dan's website. If anyone wants to reach out to me directly, please do. I'll give you Dan's number, and you can reach out to him and share with him whatever it is, whatever questions you have. But Dan, go ahead.
No, that basically the thing is, somebody said, what is success today? Success is persistence plus imagination. But But I believe that you can't persist towards something unless you have a target. And there are a lot of people who don't have a target. So you could be talking to somebody who you're trying to promote yourself to within a company, and they may not have a target. They may not know what to do next. They may be embarrassed to say that. So it's a unique communication strategy that people put together to get people to listen to them, you know. But I always find it's that I have a client who sells insurance, and he says initially when he would start to do presentations, he'd explain what he does with his insurance. And it was not nearly as impactful as when he started to say, I do MRIs and CAT scans on insurance policies. So all of you could say the same thing about cybersecurity. Somebody has a cybersecurity program, say, I do MRIs and CAT scans on that. And people are going to go, wait a minute. If somebody says they're going to do a CAT scan, I don't ask them to describe to me the machine they're going to do it. They just say, what are the results you want? I don't want you to make a mistake. Yeah. One of the funniest mistake stories quickly. I did a presentation for an accounting firm, and it was to help them develop and grow their business. So they said to me, there were 40 partners, and the partner said to me, you know, our senior partner is a curmudgeon. He's going to break his chops through this whole presentation. So at the end of the presentation, he says, what are you going to do to help us grow our business? I said, I'm going to tell you what to do, but you're never going to do it. He said, what do you mean I'm never going to do it? I said, when I came in your office, there were big gold carved letters over your reception desk. I said, get an orange prison jumpsuit, hang it right off the letters with a sign that says, we're never going to let you put this on. And he said, we would never do that. I said, I told you, but nobody would ever forget it. See, when any of you are talking about what you do, I would suggest you start out by telling the people you're talking to who they don't want to be. I don't want to be the guy that's found that this happened and that happened and this happened. They don't want to be that person.
Right.
And you're the person who's going to help them not be that person.
Right. And they could pick any breach, like
any
company.
And anybody who wants to get together and write a book of these breaches. I mean, it's astounding.
Yeah.
But, you know, you guys have to be on every single time. And the hackers and the people who try to penetrate just keep going and going and going and going.
Yeah.
So
cyber criminals, Dan.
What?
The cyber criminals.
Yeah.
These are good hackers on here.
When you told me the opportunity in cybersecurity and coming and it's growing.
Yeah.
So people who are looking for jobs in cybersecurity, company who's looking for people have to get the right people, have to get somebody who's vetted.
Yeah.
And, you know, you just can't get somebody who, you know, my nephew just graduated with a computer science degree. I'm going to hire him. No, you have to get somebody to do it. You know? But, you know, but again, we're in a process here. We love what we're doing. And just reach out if you have a question.
Yep. So, folks, if you have a question, reach out to me. Yep. Connect with me. I'll just give you Dan's number directly. Jump on his website. You can see what he has going on. Dan will be back next Monday. So Mondays with Dan every Monday around 11-ish Eastern. We'll be back again. If you have questions that you want us to ask, if you want a topic raised, let us know and we'll put that topic out there and that'll be the topic for the week. So,
and if you have a speed dial on your phone, the number you should have on that is Renee's phone number. The minute you wake up and say, I think I need cybersecurity people, she should be your first call.
That is true.
Not before a cup of coffee, but right after your first cup of coffee. All right. Because where do you go?
I cannot disagree.
I know.
All right, Dan. Thank you so much for being here again, answering all these great questions.
Thanks for the participation. Thanks for all the people who've contacted me.
Yes.
Moving forward.
Absolutely. So anyone that wants Dan's info, once again, reach out to me and we'll see you again next week. Bye, everybody.
Okay. Good week.
Have a good week.